So, today I wanted to explain to you why Hollow Knight is just another platform. Calm down, just joking, please put the pitchforks away. Indie game genres are a mess. Everyone has strong opinions. Nobody agrees. So today I want to actually sort out the most famous indie game genres without starting the war, based on actual data. To make this list as accurate as possible, we are looking at real sales performance, Steam trends, industry reports, and that sweet cultural visibility that makes a game go viral. I would say that this is more than enough to make a strong list of the most known and liked indie genres. So let's dive into it before I change my mind about the Hollow Knight thing. If you have spent more than 5 minutes on the Steam store lately, you know that roguelikes and roguelites are absolutely everywhere. And there is a very good reason for that. They've become the bread and butter of the indie world because they offer massive replayability without needing 1,000 hours of handcrafted content. Look at Hades, which basically proved you can have a deep narrative and a dating sim hidden inside a brutal action game. Then you have Slay the Spire, which basically invented the deck building craze that we are still living through. And of course we have to mention Brotato, which sold millions of copies by being a top-tagged roguelite that people just cannot stop playing. The data from sites like Hitberry and various Steam reports show that these games consistently top the charts because players love the loop of dying, getting slightly stronger, and then doing it all over again. If you're a developer, this is a dream because you can focus on solid mechanics and systems rather than building an open world the size of Skyrim. If you look at Steam tags, roguelike and roguelite are consistently among the most used and most searched indie tags. This is one of those reasons the people rank this genre so high. Platformers are probably the genre most people think of when they hear the word indie. Side-scrolling movement, jumping challenges, and precise controls are almost a tradition at this point. You know why? Because they are very approachable for beginners. Most engines like Unity and Godot have endless tutorials for 2D platforming, which is why so many indie developers start from there. This is basically the genre that started the whole indie revolution back in the day. But things are a bit different now. We have the legendary precision titles like Celeste, which combine tight controls with a really emotional story about climbing a mountain, and it sold millions because it felt personal. Celeste is often cited as the gold standard for modern indie platformers. It combines very tight movement and a strong emotional story. But then you have games like Pseudo Regalia, which is a 3D platformer Metroidvania hybrid that has been making waves lately. And here is where it becomes a bit controversial. Because back in my day, we just called everything a platformer. But today, games like Hollow Knight have changed this genre so much that Metroidvania is basically its own separate thing. Steam has a dedicated tag for it now, the press treats it as a distinct genre, and honestly, developers do too. I would still argue that Metroidvanias heavily overlap with platformers because movement and jumping are core mechanics. However, whether we like it or not, Metroidvania has become its own recognized genre. So I would say that it's the evolution of the platformers. Survival games are another massive indie genre. These games focus on resource gathering, crafting, base building, and usually some form of hunger and danger system that reminds you that life is suffering. Games like Muck became viral sensations by combining resource gathering with intense combat. And we all know the titans like Don't Starve and Terraria, which basically set the blueprint for how to keep players engaged for hundreds of hours. Platform trends show that the most downloaded and most played indie games often fall into this survival or social category. It turns out that people really enjoy the stress of almost starving to death while trying to build something. Survival games benefit a lot from emergent gameplay. Systems interacting with each other create stories without the developer scripting them. This is powerful, but also very hard to balance, especially for a solo developer. Now, let's move to co-op and social multiplayer games, which is where the real cultural visibility lives. If you want streamers to scream, co-op indie games are a good place to start. Phasmophobia is one of the best examples here. It became huge not because of fancy graphics, but because it created hilarious and scary moments that were perfect for streaming. Yeah, I know, this is actually a horror game. PC Gamer and other outlets have covered its success a lot, and Steam charts show how strong its player base has been over time. Social multiplayer games benefit massively from word of mouth and content creation. This is both exciting and a bit terrifying, because bugs are very public when 4 friends are yelling at each other while streaming. Also, networking and server costs are a nightmare, but the payoff can be huge if your game becomes the next big social hangout. Now, let's talk about puzzle and logic games, which might not always sit at the very top of the sales charts, like a viral survival game, but they are the darlings of the awards season. Many award-winning indie games live in this space because they push the boundaries of game design. You see these titles appearing on Steam charts and lists from sites like GameGPU all the time, because they offer a pure mechanical satisfaction that other genres just can't match. These games are often about that one single brilliant idea that makes the player feel like a genius. A great puzzle game can be a way to stand out without needing a massive budget for assets. Horror is one of the most efficient indie genres. You can create strong emotions with limited assets if your atmosphere and sound design are good. Look at Inside, which is a minimalist masterpiece that relies on atmosphere rather than jump scares to keep you on edge. Is it a platformer, a horror, or atmospheric game? Who knows? These games get a lot of critical acclaim and are often recognized by the Indie Game Awards. Even experimental titles that blend genres or focus on weird concepts get a lot of love here. Some of them show that you can have a high visibility title that focuses on a specific vibe or experience. Horror also performs extremely well on streaming platforms. Twitch data shows that horror games often spike in viewers around launch. We can't talk about indies without mentioning the adventure and narrative category. Games like Undertale change everything by showing that a narrative-rich RPG can have a massive community following and critical recognition long after it launches. Then you have games like To the Moon or Doki Doki Literature Club, which prove that players are looking for emotional experiences that mainstream AAA games often ignore. These games usually have a very loyal fanbase and perform well because they offer something deeply personal. Narrative games require strong writing and pacing, but often less complex systems. This makes them attractive for small teams with strong storytelling skills. Simulation and management games are the quiet giants of the indie world. Stardew Valley is the absolute benchmark here with over 10 million copies sold, which is a number that would make most big publishers jealous. It is a farming RPG that basically became a lifestyle for people. Then you have RimWorld, which is a complex colony simulation with deep systemic gameplay and a loyal fanbase. These games are all about the systems, and if you can build a deep enough simulation, people will play it forever. The data also shows that once players get hooked on a management game, they rarely leave, which makes them great for long-term revenue through updates or DLCs. As I mentioned earlier, Metroidvanias have really stepped out of the shadow of platformers to become their own powerhouse. Just look at the hype for Silksong, which basically crashed Steam and the Nintendo eShop on its release date. It took 6 years to arrive, but it instantly became one of the most played games ever on the platform, according to some reports. Then you have Animal Well, of course, which was praised by everyone for its secrets and depth. This genre is all about that feeling of discovery and mastery. It is a difficult genre to design because the level design has to be perfect, but the indie community is absolutely obsessed with it right now. Even though Metroidvanias overlap heavily with platformers and action-adventure games, the industry now treats them as a separate genre. So at this point, arguing otherwise is worthless. And finally, we have the sandbox and creative games. Sandbox games focus on player freedom and creativity. Garry's Mod is the icon here, showing that if you give players the tools to create virtually anything, they will keep your game alive for decades. Sandboxes might not always top the sales charts right at launch compared to a flashy action game, but they have incredible staying power. Community creations and mods keep these games relevant on Steam for years. It's a risky move, but if you build a good enough toy box, the players will do the work of making the content for you. So, why did I pick these specific examples? Well, it is not just because I think they are cool. It is because the data actually backs it up. We are looking at massive sales numbers, huge player counts on Steam, and critical acclaim from the biggest award shows. I mean, when Silksong crashes a platform or Stardew Valley sells 10 million units, it tells us exactly what the market is hungry for. So, let's make a small recap now. We have seen that roguelikes are king for replayability. Survival and co-op games are the way to go if you want viral success. And Metroidvanias are currently the gold standard for prestige indie titles. But the most important thing is to build something you actually care about. Let me know what you think in the comments, and maybe we can argue about whether Hollow Knight is a platformer or not. And like always, thanks for watching!